He invited Karoline Leavitt onto his show expecting to corner her. What he didn't expect? To be the one walking off set, stunned and silent, while she never even raised her voice. Karoline had done dozens of interviews before. Some were friendly, some weren't. But when her team told her the Everett Lane show had extended an invitation, she raised an eyebrow. "You sure this isn't a trap?" she asked, only half joking. Everett Lane was infamous for talking over his guests, especially conservative ones. His show, filmed in a sleek downtown Philadelphia studio, was a Monday night staple for millions of progressives. To others, it was just background noise, loud, sarcastic, unpredictable. Karoline wasn't a rookie. She had sharpened her skills on college town panels and early morning cable debates. The more hostile the room, the sharper she became. Her communications director, Lyle, leaned against the wall, arms folded. "You've got nothing to prove. But if you go prepared. He'll bait you. He'll interrupt. Don't take it personally. Just keep your rhythm." Karoline didn't respond right away. She watched a clip from Everett's latest episode where he mocked a guest for fumbling a response on school choice. "I'll do it," she said at last. "But I'm not playing defense." Lyle blinked. Meaning, Karoline said. "I'm not going in there to be polite while he talks over me. If he wants a spectacle, he'll get one, but it'll be on my terms." What happened next moved fast. Calls from producers, shifting topics, last-minute schedule changes. The show's producer, Gwen, kept circling back to one theme: free speech on college campuses. "We'll start there," she said. "Everett's passionate about it." Karoline smirked. "Yeah, I've seen. Passionate is one word for it." By Wednesday morning, the team was on a flight to Philly. It was early March. Snow still clung to the ground, and the air had that sharp chill just before spring. Karoline kept to herself, headphones in, marking up notes. She wasn't rehearsing, she was building her spine. At the hotel, Lyle handed her the final rundown. "They're expecting a calm debate," he said. She didn't look up. Then they invited the wrong person. That night, she FaceTimed her younger brother, who had just come back from a campus protest in Austin. "People still think yelling louder means they're winning," he said. Karoline nodded. "They'll learn." Before the call ended, her brother added, "Don't let him rattle you, just answer the question, not the tone." That stuck with her. The next morning, she walked to a quiet cafe near Rittenhouse Square, watching a city that didn't care who she was. A young man at the next table flipped through the Atlantic. A nurse in scrubs ordered breakfast, exhaustion in her smile. Two construction workers joked about traffic. That grounded her. Back at the hotel, Gwen texted, "We're set. Studio car at 3:15, live at 5. Everett may say hi beforehand. May say hi." That told Karoline everything she needed to know. He wasn't planning on it. She didn't mind. She dressed carefully. Not flashy, not stiff. Navy blazer, cream top, clean makeup, a silver pin from her grandmother. Before stepping out, she looked in the mirror, exhaled, and turned off the light. As the car rolled toward the studio, she had no idea just how far off script this show was about to go. The building was taller than she expected, its glass panels reflecting the heavy gray sky. The studio was on the 12th floor, tucked behind a nondescript lobby that smelled faintly of espresso and sanitizer. A production assistant met them at the side entrance. "You're early. That's good. Everett's in a mood." Karoline smiled slightly. "Is that different from usual?" The assistant didn't answer. The elevator ride up was quiet, punctuated only by the occasional ding as they passed each floor. Lyle broke the silence. "If he gets personal, redirect. Don't match his energy." Karoline nodded, eyes fixed on the floor number climbing toward 12, but she wasn't worried about matching his energy. She was planning to control the temperature of the room the moment she sat down. The hallway walls were lined with framed screenshots of past interviews, frozen moments of confrontation. Karoline passed a photo of Everett mid-shout, jabbing a finger at a former senator. Another showed him smugly sipping from a mug labeled, "Facts First." Halfway down the hall, a woman in a headset met them. You'll be in Green Room 2. Everett's wrapping up a call. Green Room 2 looked more like a dentist's waiting area. White walls, 2 armchairs, a tray of cold waters and energy. Bars, a large monitor dominated the space, displaying the live studio feed. Everett's voice echoed from the screen. And if you honestly think banning speakers helps students, you've already lost the plot. Karoline didn't sit right away. She watched, him on the monitor, smug, fast-talking, his tone just shy of sarcastic. She'd seen it before. People like him didn't argue to win. They argued to entertain. The door opened behind her. "Well," a voice said, "if it isn't the rebel from New Hampshire." Karoline turned. There he was, Everett Lane, sharp black blazer, signature white sneakers, and that ever-present smile, half-forced as always. "Wasn't sure you'd show," he added, stepping inside. Karoline extended a hand. "Why wouldn't I?" Everett shook it, loosely. "People like you usually send tweets, not actual arguments." Behind her, Lyle shifted, but Karoline didn't flinch. "I figured I'd give your viewers a reason to stay through the first segment." Everett raised his eyebrows, impressed, but still sizing her up. "Careful," he smirked. "You might start sounding confident." "I am." He let out a single laugh. "Let's just keep it civil, yeah? You say your piece, I say mine, and we all go home in one piece." Karoline held his gaze. "I hope you brought better arguments than last week. Otherwise, this is going to be a short conversation." There it was, the flicker in his eyes. Brief, but there. Everett turned to Gwen, who had entered quietly. "We good?" "All set," she replied. "Live in 12. You'll be seated across from Karoline. First segment, campus speech codes, then social media bans." Everett nodded. "Keep her mic hot." Gwen gave a tight smile. "All guest mics stay on, Everett. You know that." He winked and walked out. Karoline turned to Gwen. "Is that normal for him?" Gwen exhaled. "More than I'd like." Minutes before going live, Karoline sat down, reviewing her notes one last time. On the monitor, the studio countdown ticked down. Her heart was steady, not calm, focused. She glanced at the camera angles being tested, 2-shot close-up wide frame. No room for error. She took a sip of water, then looked at Lyle. "Ready?" He nodded. "You've got this." She smiled. He's not as clever as he thinks he is. But as the stage lights flared on and Everett took his seat across from her, there was one thing no one in that studio expected: how fast the power dynamic was about to shift. The studio lights were harsh, clinical, hotter than they looked on screen. Karoline's chair was angled just slightly away from Everett's, a subtle producer's trick to stage visual tension. She adjusted her blazer, checked her posture, and glanced at the countdown. 5, 4, 3. A red light blinked on. Mics. Siv. Cameras rolling. Everett jumped in. "Welcome back to the Everett Lane Show. I'm Everett, and tonight I'm joined by Karoline Leavitt, former White House staffer, commentator, and one of the loudest voices in the so-called free speech movement." Karoline smiled but didn't react to the tone. Everett pressed on. "Let's get right to it. You've said publicly that college campuses are hostile to independent thought. Are you suggesting students shouldn't be allowed to protest speakers they disagree with?" Karoline leaned in slightly. "I'm suggesting that shouting someone down isn't protest, it's performance. And when universities allow it, they're not protecting students. They're protecting noise." Everett let out a short laugh. "So students don't get to express outrage? Now that's rich, coming from a political side that gets triggered by pronouns." There it was. Karoline could feel the energy shift, just slightly. She didn't take the bait. "Outrage is fine," she said evenly. "Silencing isn't. There's a difference between protest and preventing speech altogether. If your argument is strong, it should stand on its own. You don't need to block the door." Everett leaned back, stretching a hand toward the camera like he was explaining the basics to a slow class. "Let's not pretend this is about protecting speech." But Karoline wasn't here to play by his script. and in the next few minutes, everyone watching would know it. You want to center voices you agree with, Everett was saying, and call it free speech. But when others push back, suddenly it's censorship. Karoline interrupted, not with volume, but with precision. And you don't want to protect debate. You want to curate it. You only like free speech when it flattens your worldview. Everett sat forward sharply. I'm not the one passing laws about what teachers can say in classrooms, Karoline. Neither am I, she shot back. But if we're talking policy, let's talk about administrators canceling events because someone's feelings might get hurt. That's not education. That's theater. A flicker of discomfort crossed Everett's face, not panic, realization. Karoline wasn't playing defense. She was steering. He tried again. You've built a career crying victim. Oh no, the big bad university wouldn't let my speaker talk. Meanwhile, you push policies that restrict actual academic freedom. Karoline's tone remained steady, deliberate. I've spoken at schools where security had to walk students out in tears because their own classmates were threatening them for attending a lecture. If that's the freedom you're defending, Everett, maybe check your compass. The studio went quieter. Camera operators shifted. The faint hum of the air system filled the silence. Lyle, watching from behind the set wall, didn't blink. Everett's smile was tight, practiced. So it's about feelings now? No, Karoline replied. It's about fear. And if you don't see the difference, maybe that's why you're still treating this like a game. A voice came through Everett's earpiece. 2 minutes left in segment. He adjusted his mic, trying to regain control. Karoline, I'll ask you plainly. Are you saying the left is systematically shutting down free speech? Karoline tilted her head slightly. I'm saying it's not a glitch, it's a strategy. Everett opened his mouth, but she was faster. And the irony? This isn't new. Every generation has people who pretend they're the resistance while running the institutions. You've just rebranded it. For a second, Everett didn't speak. He blinked. Then gave a short, forced laugh. He leaned forward, ready to reset the tone. All right, lively start. After the break, Karoline cut in, still composed. Before we go, Everett, just one question. Do you ever let your guests finish a thought before telling them what they meant? Everett paused. I thought I did. Roll the tape back, she said, still smiling. The crew scrambled, ready to cut to commercial. But Everett glanced at the control booth and realized this wasn't going to be just another episode. The red light blinked off. The room didn't exhale. No small talk. No sip of water. Everett didn't even look at her. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, tapping his note cards against the desk. Gwen's voice cut into his earpiece. Back live in 90 seconds. Karoline sat still. Not smirking, not angry. Watching, Everett finally turned to her. You done hijacking my show? Karoline shrugged lightly. Are you done monologuing through a conversation? He didn't respond. 60 seconds. Keep it tight, Gwen said. A tech leaned in to adjust Karoline's mic, but she didn't move. She could feel it now. Control. Everett wasn't used to being challenged this directly. Without shouting, without theatrics, and she hadn't even raised her voice. 30 seconds. Everett looked over as if reconsidering her. Then quietly, I'm not the enemy here. You know that, right? Karoline's expression didn't change. You say that like it makes you less responsible. He blinked, sat back, exhaled once, short and sharp. 10 seconds, Gwen said. The red light blinked on. Everett's voice was a shade tighter now, less casual. Welcome back to the Everett Lane Show. I'm here with Karoline Leavitt, who's made it clear she thinks free speech is under attack. So let's push this further. Social media bans. Do you really believe private companies owe you a platform? Karoline leaned in, not aggressively, but like someone speaking from experience, not theory. I believe that when the digital town square controls information that affects national elections and shuts down stories without consequence, we've got a problem. Everett smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You mean like misinformation? Karoline nodded. Exactly. Misinformation. Like the time an outlet took you out of context, Karoline said smoothly, and you posted 5 videos correcting it. Should you have been suspended for that? Everett hesitated. That's different, he said finally. That was my own content. But the platform didn't know that, Karoline cut in. They acted on what they thought, that's the point. When a handful of companies become the referees, there are no rules, just reactions. Everett exhaled, pivoting. But it's their business, their call. Karoline leaned back. And if your bank decided to freeze your account because they didn't, like your opinions? Everett laughed, but it was thin. Come on, that's a stretch. No, she said, quiet and sharp. It's a direction. She let that hang. For the first time, Everett hesitated. He flipped a note card, looked at the camera, then almost reflexively, glanced toward the control room. Do we have the clip ready? Gwen's voice crackled in his earpiece. You didn't ask for one. That rattled him. A blink, a recalibration. He looked back at Karoline. Okay, so what's the solution? Let everyone say anything, anytime, anywhere? Karoline smiled faintly. The solution is accountability. Not to corporations, to each other. If someone lies, call them out, debate them, beat them in the arena of ideas, but don't lock the arena doors. Everett shifted. His knee bounced under the table. Karoline's voice sharpened. You talk about protecting democracy, but you're defending systems that punish disagreement. That's not protecting anything. That's controlling outcomes. He tried to wave her off. You've made your point. No, Everett, she said, calm, but unflinching. I haven't. That froze him. You invited me here to make noise, she continued. I showed up to make a point. You don't have to agree, but you could at least let me finish a sentence without slicing it in half. Silence. Everett turned to the camera. Well, that's all the time we have. No, Karoline said again. You still haven't answered my question. A pause. His eyes flicked back to her. Which one? She leaned in slightly. The one I asked earlier. Do you ever let your guests finish a thought before telling them what they meant? Everett stared. Karoline's voice dropped softer now. Because if you don't, then what are you even hosting? An interview? Or a performance? The control booth's silence said everything. For the first time in his career, Everett didn't know how to end his own segment. He sat still, not a twitch, not a blink. Just a blank stare at the floor monitor, like maybe it held the script he'd lost control of. Karoline waited. She didn't shift, didn't speak, just watched him, letting the silence settle like fog. The camera crew stayed frozen. No countdown, no cue. Even Gwen hesitated, one hand raised, uncertain whether to cut the feed or let it ride. Everett cleared his throat. So, he said, forcing a smile. Karoline thinks the real threat is too many guardrails, good to know. Karoline spoke gently. No sarcasm. No, Everett. A beat. I think the real threat is when the people with the microphones pretend they don't have them. That one landed. You could hear the creak of Everett's chair as he leaned back, his lips pressed into a thin line. He wasn't used to losing grip this early, and definitely not on his own turf. He pushed forward. Well, he said, some of us actually work in media, Karoline. We know what's reckless and what's responsible. Karoline tilted her head, just slightly. Responsible would have been letting your guest answer without interruption. That did it? Everett pushed away from the desk, adjusting his mic pack as he muttered something the cameras didn't catch. Then abruptly, he stood. We're done here. Sound tech flinched. Gwen's voice cut in half a second later. Everett, stay seated. We're still, but he ignored her. He unclipped his mic, slapped it onto the desk, and walked off set. His earpiece dangled from his collar. Karoline didn't move. She simply turned to camera 2, now locked on her. She looked directly into the lens, calm and clear. If walking off is easier than listening, she said, maybe we're not the fragile ones after all. The silence that followed was electric. Everett had already disappeared behind the curtain, the crew trailing after him like nervous interns. Lyle, watching from backstage, exhaled, just a whisper under his breath. Damn. Holy hell. Back in the control booth, Gwen rubbed her temples. We're not cutting. Leave the shot. Let her speak. On screen, Karoline straightened in her chair. This was never about left or right, she said evenly. It's about whether people who ask hard questions get treated like enemies, whether we can disagree, without someone storming off stage. A few heads in the crew nodded. No one spoke. You can yell. You can walk out. She let the words settle. Or you can stay seated and prove your ideas can hold up in daylight. That's what grown-ups do. In the control room, someone hit the live feed to web switch. Suddenly, the studio was streaming directly online. Unedited. Uncut. Karoline glanced at the empty chair across from her. Still warm. I came here for a conversation, she said simply. Not a performance, not a spectacle, just a conversation. She let that hang. Then, almost like she'd rehearsed it, she stood up, unhooked her mic, and handed it to a tech. As she walked off set, no one called her back. No one needed to, because the cameras had already captured what words couldn't fix. A moment when everything shifted, and it wasn't until she stepped into the hallway and saw her phone screen flooded with notifications that she realized just how far this moment would travel. For the first few minutes, she didn't say anything. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages, missed calls, emails stacking on top of each other. Her lock screen was a blur of names. Lyle caught up to her by the service elevator. You okay? She nodded, still scrolling. What's it look like out there? He leaned in slightly. You're everywhere. Trending on X. Instagram clips already circulating. Somebody screen recorded the walk-off and added subtitles. Karoline blinked. That fast? Faster. A producer from another show crossed the hallway behind them, giving Karoline a sharp glance. Half curious, half concerned. No words. Just a look. They rode the elevator down in silence. Somewhere between floors 6 and 4, Karoline's phone buzzed again. An unknown number. She declined it. Any word from Everett? Lyle shook his head. Gwen's doing damage control. They might cut the show. Short tonight, re-air a panel. As they stepped into the parking garage, the evening chill wrapped around them. Karoline exhaled. I wasn't trying to humiliate him, she said quietly. I know, Lyle replied. You were just honest. That's what rattled him. She slid into the back seat, phone still in hand. Notifications kept rolling. Karoline Leavitt stands her ground. Everett Lane gets schooled on live TV. The moment, everything shifted. Some were cheering, others were furious. A few called it a publicity stunt, but most, they just kept rewatching the clip, sharing it, arguing over it, quoting it. By the time they reached the hotel, Gwen had texted Lyle, Everett not speaking to press. Please don't gloat. Karoline laughed when she read it. I wasn't planning to. Later that night, she sat alone at the desk in her hotel room replaying the moment. Not the walk-off, the seconds before. The silence. The decision not to yell. Not to match volume with volume. It would have been easy to snap back. But she didn't, and that made all the difference. A text popped up from her brother in Austin. You stayed seated, that's the whole win. She typed back. Thanks. It didn't feel like a win. His response came quick. It did to a lot of people. Karoline looked out the window. The city below was still alive. People moving, living, not thinking about cable TV feuds. And yet, somewhere online, a conversation had started. Not just about left and right, but about tone. About control. About who gets to speak. And who gets to decide when the conversation ends. She thought about what Everett had said earlier. Some of us actually work in media. But maybe that was the problem. Too many shows. Not enough listening. Too many people rehearsing lines instead of facing hard questions. Karoline didn't have all the answers. She didn't even think she'd won anything. But she knew one thing for sure. Next time someone tried to shout her down, they'd remember. This night, because she didn't flinch, she didn't raise her voice, and she didn't leave the room, she made them do it. And in the end, sometimes the quietest stance leaves the loudest echo. The moral? Don't mistake control for courage. The strongest voice isn't always the loudest, it's the one that stays calm. When everything else gets loud, stay steady. If this story resonated with you or reminded you of the power of restraint and clarity, hit subscribe. There's more where that came from.